Hey everyone, this is Korean from the Inside Crypto Podcast. Hope you are doing well. Hopefully, the sound is not too loud because I do have the fan on in the background because it is summertime here in Taiwan. Um, but yeah, I did not do a Bitcoin Weekly this week because we spoke to the CEO of Lionsgate Networks. If you haven't checked out that episode, you should definitely do so. It was an awesome episode, very interesting because you always hear about crypto recovery services and people say like I can help you get your Bitcoin back that I dumped in a hard drive 10 years ago, and you never hear about people who say yes, X person helped me recover my crypto. So it's a fantastic episode. Check out Bethelel. um, he's a very interesting person, very cool speaker. He's got a very altruistic notion of life and the things that he wants to do with Lionsgate and the people that he wants to help. And of course, they have this partnership with Caspa, which was really interesting as well. But we're not here to talk about past episodes. We are here to talk about the current and present episode. Apologies for my background as well, because I am still relatively new to the streaming game, and the angle and where my phone is at the moment is a bit weird. But yeah, so Bitcoin, as of the moment that I'm shooting this live, is $65,353. This is on CoinGecko, of course. If you want to follow along, I'm going to be talking about it there. That's great, right? Because like literally like 20 minutes ago, Bitcoin was at $64,000. It is down, of course, right? 7 days, like 7 days is down 3%. I mean, Bitcoin going back a little bit over a week ago, we saw that all-time high of $73,000 and everyone was happy. I was happy. I was like looking at my portfolio. I'm like, yay, finally, like making it through the bull market, I should say, making it through the bear market. And prices finally went up, and that's always a good thing. So lots of Bitcoin news, lots of news going on. Of course, since we didn't have a Bitcoin Weekly, so I didn't get to talk about a lot of stuff. So I'm going to talk about news going from like most recent going to the oldest news perhaps. And again, for 30 minutes or so, I wish there was somebody else with me at this time. Unfortunately not, though it is possible. There's an option in YouTube Live that you can like sort of live stream with two people at the same time. So that's an idea. I have to talk about it with a coworker of mine. But let's talk about the first news story today. So we'll be looking at CoinDesk if you want to follow along. And of course, the first news story about today is like buyers for FTX's 8% stake in AI startup Anthropic. So if you've been under a rock, right, you would have probably missed the stories about ChatGPT, about Google Gemini, about Anthropic. And one of the big stories about Anthropic is that 8% of Anthropic is owned by FTX, which is now the defunct exchange. So, of course, Anthropic and AI are big sectors that anyone who has significant money was like, I want to buy this, right? That's a great deal. Anthropic is probably not too well known outside of the US because their chatbot Claude is only available for the US, or could be North America. So that's kind of like a silly thing. I still don't understand why they do it. But yeah, so like, I mean, FTX is selling their 8% stake in Anthropic is probably gonna, it's basically, if you lost money at FTX, you should guaranteed get your money from the FTX bankruptcy estate because the Anthropic sale is gonna net a lot of money. The next story we're gonna talk about is SEC's Gensler says crypto firms skip public disclosures by dodging registration. So of course, this is a big deal, right? Like the SEC, while they passed the Bitcoin spot ETFs in the United States, Gary Gensler is still probably not a big fan of crypto. I mean, when it was passed, he was like, yeah, it's passed, but you guys really need to be careful. So he said the industry could benefit from disinfectant. And I think things are looking good. But going back to the Lionsgate episode, the CEO there said basically that lots of crypto firms or lots of people who crypto scams are down, quote unquote, right, because people are not reporting them anymore. And that's an interesting idea, and I can definitely believe that because if you're in certain countries around the world, you would have probably heard gotten a message from the government or your bank or something. You would have seen stories in the UK about that. We're banning you banning you from buying crypto with your bank account with us. And here in Taiwan, I remember getting a message from my bank, which was like, hey, by the way, we noticed you sent some money to X destination. By the way, we think this is for crypto, and if you buy crypto, right, it's supremely volatile, and you're most likely to lose your money. I was like, oh, okay. At least you didn't stop me. But then again, I've had conversations here in Taiwan with people that I bank with or people that I know in the bank for a long time because I've been a customer at one bank in Taiwan for 15 years. I mean, they were my first bank account, and it was like, I talked to the guy and I was like, yeah, we cannot talk about crypto to you. Don't even bother with it. We're never going to opt out crypto options here in Taiwan. And it kind of makes sense as well because banks here, this side of the world, are pretty traditional. I will say Japan is the exception. The Japanese government has sort of gone live and like being like, yeah, we're thinking about crypto and it's sort of okay over there. I don't know any Japanese person who does invest in it. I do know a few Japanese people. I've just never asked them, like, do you invest in crypto? Anyway, let's go on to another story. It says Bitcoin slips to 64K as large grayscale GBTC outflows continue. Again, this is not surprising, right? Like when the Bitcoin ETFs launched, Bitcoin was at like low 50,000s. Honestly, I don't remember. I'm pretty old. So we're seeing a lot of outflows in the last week, again, because, people who bought in at 57,000, like, oh my God, I've made... At the highs, right, I made more than $15,000 in profit, right, if you bought a single Bitcoin. So, of course, we're going to see outflows. The other thing with the GBTC as well, right, let me just state this is not financial advice, it's also my opinion, is that GBTC is expensive. Like, their fee is like 2.5%, or they dropped it down to 1.5%. So, of course, if you're holding a Bitcoin, if you're holding Bitcoin with GBTC, right, they are the largest spot Bitcoin ETF, of course, coming back from Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust. So some people are like, okay, my Bitcoin survived Grayscale, I'm going to keep it there. But other people are like, why would I pay 2.5% fees for my Bitcoin with Grayscale when I can go on to Fidelity or Invesco or iBit with BlackRock and pay 1.5% or 1% or lower than that in some cases. So it makes a lot of sense that Grayscale is seeing outflows. To me, the interesting would be like what is Grayscale's plan to keep Bitcoin or keep people coming into their spot ETF, right? Like, I mean, if you lose all this money, that just negatively affects your company and your operations. And it's just like a big, gigantic hammer on your reputation, pretty much. So let's go on to the next story. It says BlackRock is seeing only a little bit demand for Ethereum from clients, says head of digital assets. So that's really interesting that they're seeing only a little demand. And it's an interesting thought. I don't know what you guys think about this. That people are like, okay, most people, even non-crypto people, have heard about Bitcoin. They've heard about BlackRock. And they would be like, okay, Bitcoin seems to be the thing. What is this Ethereum thing? I'm sure, like in the spectrum of things, right? Let's say, I would say 60 to 70% of people have heard about Bitcoin, non-crypto people. I would say even less than that, 40% of non-crypto people have heard about Ethereum and they don't know anything about it. As someone who just traveled recently, and spent more than 10 days in South Africa, speaking to people there, they understand I'd say 90% of people have heard about this crypto thing. But so it kind of makes sense that BlackRock is seeing limited demand from their clients for Ethereum, because again, most typical BlackRock clients or high wealth clients or mid wealth clients or people who have things in IRAs and that sort of stuff, they wouldn't know what Ethereum is. Like, what is Ethereum, right? It is the number 2 crypto in the world by market cap. And then what, right? People don't know about Uniswap. People don't know about, they probably heard about NFTs, but they don't realize that NFTs, Ethereum is a very large NFT ecosystem. So people don't realize that Ethereum is the programmable layer of cryptocurrency, so crypto, right? So that makes sense that there's limited demand. We are heading to May for the potential spot Ethereum ETF, but we'll have to see what happens there. Let's move on to a March 22nd story, which is there can probably be only one Bitcoin. Again, another story from CoinDesk, and I think that is true, right? Like people talk in the cryptocurrency space, they talk about like $1,000 Solana or Ethereum going up to Bitcoin prices, and I think that is possible, I think it's very unlikely though. Like I'd put that at a 20% probability just because it's this a lot of life, right? Like when it comes to networking, when it comes to network effects, it's a lot about momentum, right? And like I remember I did a podcast with the CEO of Bytree Asset Management, Charlie Morris, and he had like a great analogy when it came to network effects. And I just think no one else will ever get the network effect or the like. When I mean network effect, right? Like the network effect of Bitcoin, right? When it comes to the media, when it comes to people passionate about, when it comes to the history behind Bitcoin, when it comes to the Wikipedia articles and the press releases, and of course, big people like BlackRock and Fidelity backing it, um, and then having this amazing historical spot Bitcoin ETFs launched by all these players, right? It's yeah, there will only be one Bitcoin. Like even if and when an Ethereum ETF does launch, I don't think there will ever be an Ethereum ETF or Ethereum ETFs will ever equal like the assets under management of Bitcoin ETFs, just because it is such an unknown asset. It is such an unknown thing in the public sphere that, yeah, like the article says, right, only one Bitcoin, there will only ever be one Bitcoin, which kind of makes sense. Okay, let's go down and see what else is happening. This talks about Dogecoin extradition to South Korea. Yeah, interesting, but we don't really care about Dogecoin anymore. Another SEC story, of course. The SEC, this is not new, but they've asked for millions and more lawyers to oversee crypto oversight. And this kind of makes sense, right? Because crypto is, if you're somebody who works in crypto, or you work for a crypto company, you work for a DeFi company, you would have seen like just as the bull market, quote unquote bull market, if you believe there is one, started, lots of crypto companies are hiring, the infrastructure companies and DeFi companies and education companies. And basically, if you have crypto experience, or if you're interested in crypto, now's the time to sort of look for a crypto job and see what you want to do. So it makes sense, right? The SEC wants to oversee all these people, especially people stateside, people who have some sort of influence in America. And with the Bitcoin spot ETFs out there in the wild, I think clarity as far as regulation is coming, or has come, in a sense, in that if you're a crypto company operating in America, and again, go back to previous podcasts we did, right? We spoke to people who are based in America, like physically themselves. Maybe the company's not based in America, and they're like, yeah, I would love to come back to America, but I'm worried about regulation. And maybe now, with more clarity, people do want to come back here. So the SEC is probably going to get more lawyers and probably going to get more money. There is an election in America, right, this year, of course. That might change the role of the SEC. That might change Gary Gensler as well, depending on if the new president's a Democrat or Republican or Libertarian or something in between, right? We'll just have to see what happens. Next story is El Salvador doubles down on Bitcoin. Again, not surprising, right? Like when El Salvador started buying Bitcoin, people were like, what, this guy's crazy. But it worked out, right? And I think he said, like, the president of El Salvador said he's going to buy one Bitcoin every month, which is, again, definitely doable if you're working with a national treasury. And it could definitely, looking at the optimistic price predictions of Bitcoin, it's, if things hit, 100K or something, right, he's going to be super rich. And the people in El Salvador are going to be happy, right? And there's a bunch of really good YouTube videos you guys should check out, talking about what is the current status of El Salvador. And things have gotten a bit authoritarian for people's liking, but it's still very, very positive, very interesting, and definitely something to keep an eye out on. So the next story, right, which is in the title of today's sort of live stream, is Floki developers plan regulated bank accounts next value capture for tokens. So it says Swift payments and SEPA IBANs will be supported, allowing users to transact and transfer money globally. So Floki Inu, or Floki, there's a bunch of different Flokis, but I'm sure they're talking about Floki Inu here, is a supremely popular meme coin, right? And a meme coin is just a coin that inherently has no value. It's just like a funny picture of dogs recently, but there's also pepper coins and other stuff like that. But it's interesting that they're trying to bring value like this way, but like, how would that work? Like, how would you be transferring money, and why would you be transferring meme coins, right? Like, what is the use of SEPA and Swift payments and stuff? Are you going to be transferring like 10 million Floki Inu coins to your bank account and then converting that to fiat and stuff. Like, it's interesting, but it doesn't make a huge amount of sense to me. And let's switch over to Cointelegraph and check out some stories. It says, what is the Genesis block? So this is cool because if you guys are watching the live stream, you can see the Genesis block poster behind me. The Genesis block, right, for those of you who are new to Bitcoin and new to crypto, was the first Ethereum, the first Bitcoin block that was ever mined. And the code for it is back there on the poster. If you're interested, let me know. I can stick up a picture on the YouTube channel and you can see that poster. This is a poster I bought from a company called Displayed. But yeah, it's just a great piece of cryptocurrency history. And definitely, if you're looking for cryptocurrency posters, check out Display. They have quite a few. Another story, 22 hours ago, EU committees approved ban on anonymous crypto transactions via hosted wallets. So this is really interesting because, as you know, the EU's crypto legislation, MyCar, is coming into effect this year, I believe, the end of this year, with more comprehensive legislation coming into effect in 2025, I believe. So, and again, you know, like, I guess the EU has accepted crypto, and lots of countries have, right? And I think the crypto has this ethos of anonymity and privacy. But I think, you know, like with any financial system, right, you have to be careful of terrorism, you have to be careful of funding, even though the blockchain is very transparent. But again, it's behind an address, right? Like, in order to trace money that my brother sends me, right, you'd find his block address, you'd find my block address, and then you'd see the money going to, but you don't know who is the person behind this address and where does it come from and what's my name and that sort of stuff. And that's where KYC comes into play. And it makes sense because there's still trouble in the world, so you don't want anonymous transactions to happen. Okay, Bitcoin demand in Argentina reaches highest point in nearly 2 years. And again, if you're someone who's kept an eye on stories like this, Argentina is one of those countries very similar to Turkey, very similar to a few countries around the world where the inflation is absolutely crazy. Argentina has that new president, Javier Milei, who's been like, yes, Bitcoin is okay. And he's enacted a lot of like stringent measures to keep the Argentine economy under wraps. No, under wraps is in check. But this is going to be painful, right? And he said, like, very much himself, it's like, all these measures are going to be very painful, but at the end of the light at the end of the tunnel will be worth it. So, of course, it makes sense if you're in Argentina or you're in Turkey, if you're in a few countries in Africa, that you want to buy Bitcoin because that maintains its value, right? And it is highly volatile, but at some point in 10 years of Bitcoin's history, right, the price is going to go up again at some point, right? Despite, I saw some guy called Charlie Rogers, who's some famous investor, who like, Bitcoin's going to go to zero, right? And again, I'm not a Bitcoin expert, but loads of people have said this in the past however many years, and it hasn't happened yet, so maybe that says something, right? Okay, I think I'm going to do this for 20 minutes today, just because I can feel like the pressure in my chest. Let's try and do one more story. It says, Ethereum price clings to key support amid SEC probe and traders shifting sentiment. So, again, this is a very much developing story. Like this past Friday, there's something about a canary on Bitcoin site, on Ethereum site. I've got to keep saying Bitcoin. And people are like, oh my God. So someone has asked information from the Ethereum Foundation, and the Ethereum Foundation said actually, or indirectly said, yes, someone has asked this information from us. So despite that, the price of Ethereum didn't take too much of an impact. And I think overall, the performance of the network and the protocol is still doing well. Keep an eye out. Next week, I'll be releasing a layer 2 data visualization, which shows like how much TVL is locked in layer 2s. And it's quite a lot, but there's only like 2 or 3 protocols where the layer 2 TVL on Ethereum is doing really, really well. So there's lots of fundamental things that are going really well for Ethereum. So it makes sense that despite like these sort of governmental interventions and that sort of thing, that the price is holding where it is at the moment. And with that, guys, this will be today's last story. Let me know what you think and how you felt about today's episode. And I've got to remember to cut some shorts from this content because that could be pretty damn useful by itself, right? So hope you enjoyed it. This is really fun. I think 20 minutes is going to be the goal for me going forward. just because it is so difficult to talk, especially if you're asthmatic and stuff. But I had fun. As always, lots. It's great to catch up on crypto. Stay tuned. I'm still trying to get these down to once a week, or at least maybe do them in the evenings when I have free time. Um, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks again, and then I'll see you guys next time.